Medina,
Here in Ann Arbor.
Mayor Taylor,
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Iyer,
Here, Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Nelson,
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Briggs,
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Remlawi.
Present, Ann Arbor.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Hayner, second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Agenda is approved. Are there communications today from our city administrator?
No, Mayor, they're not.
We have no introductions today, and so we move directly into public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. To speak at public comment reserve time, please enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you are connected further, it'll be your turn to speak when our clerk identifies you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. When it is your turn to speak, you'll have 3 minutes in which to speak. So please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time is expired. When your time is expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Dave DeVarty.
Mr. DeBarty, phone number 132. Press *6 to unmute your phone. Mr. DeBarty, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, members of council and Mayor Taylor, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dave DeVarty. I live at 1231 Baldwin in Ann Arbor. I've been involved in Ann Arbor community policymaking for many years, as most of you know, having served on the City Council and Planning Commission in the 1980s, Downtown Development Authority in the 1990s and 2000s, and currently serving the city on its Zoning Board of Appeals and the county as an elected member of the Washtenaw Community College Board of Trustees. I come tonight to speak in favor of passing at first reading the proposed minor text change in the PUD for Dominic's Restaurant on Monroe Street. Dominic was my father. I started working there in junior high school. At this time, I no longer have any financial interest. It's my brother's restaurant. He opened the first sidewalk cafe in Ann Arbor in 1960. Several generations of law students, business students, undergrads, graduate students, alumni, community members from all walks of life have met and enjoyed each other's conversation and company over the past 60 years in the restaurant and on its patios, balconies, and in its garden. I want to emphasize a couple points in favor of this proposal. First, my brother Rich and the owner of the Green Planet business on the corner of Monroe and Tappan have agreed to add a rain garden in the northeast corner of the parcel to assist the city in reducing one of its goals, reducing rainwater flow into the stormwater system. This is a positive benefit for the entire community. Second, the curb cut in question at the moment directly serves an apartment that has been a part of the Dominic's since it became one of the very first PUDs in the city. I'm not sure if it was the first or second PUD when the PUD ordinance was first allowed. One of the reasons that my dad undertook to do a PUD was to keep the housing there. So there's affordable housing that this driveway serves. Please vote yes to move this proposal to a public hearing and a second reading. Thank you for your consideration. and I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Scott Munzel.
Mr. Munzel, phone number 310, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor and City Council members. Good evening. This is Scott Munzel speaking from 9 Jefferson Court in Arbor, Michigan. I'm the attorney representing the Green Planet, which is the tenant at 700 Tappan Street and the licensee operating from that location for many years. Thanks for the opportunity to make a couple of brief comments about your agenda item C2. Basically, we're requesting that you schedule a second reading and hold a public hearing on this proposal to slightly revise the text of the PUD supplemental regulations. At that public hearing, we would then be able to explain the proposal more fully and explain why it makes sense. We'd be able to explain the public benefits being offered and explain, in fact, why the proposed text amendment actually returns the PUD to its original intent related to the timing of the removal of those curb cuts, or the timing of the removal of that curb cut. And so we're requesting that the City Council schedule the second reading and the public hearing to more fully explain to Council those issues. Thanks again for the time, and I can answer any questions when you get to the item C2 on the agenda. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blaine Coleman.
Mr. Coleman, phone number 941, please press *6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
This is Blaine Coleman. All the human rights movements of the 1960s and 70s came out of the Black Freedom Movement, which was thousands of completely defenseless people putting their lives on the line against the brute force of American city councils, state governments, and the federal government. So it's especially sickening for Ann Arbor City Council to pretend that it supports human rights while throwing up a stone wall against any proposal for Palestinian human rights. You, the City Council, stood like a stone wall against Black civil rights, the most basic Black civil rights. Specifically, you stood against fair housing laws until demonstrators outside your council building forced you to finally break down that wall in 1963. You, the City Council, still stand like a stone wall against the thousands who demonstrated for Palestinian human rights right outside your building last summer, while Israel had just finished murdering hundreds of Palestinians. Those demonstrators, and I was among them, those demonstrators loudly demanded that you approve the resolution against military aid to Israel. Pretty simple, wouldn't you say? But no, you still stand like a stone wall against the thousands of people who are petitioning you to approve the resolution against military aid to Israel. And for 20 years, you have been a stone wall against even the slightest resolution for Palestinian human rights. And it seems like you have no shame at all. Are you even human? What do you have to offer those thousands of people who are demanding the most basic human rights against your guns, your money, your military aid to Israel? What do you have to offer people who care about human rights? Here's what you have to offer. You approve resolutions to give the whole population psychedelic drugs without medical supervision. Yeah,
30
you approve
seconds.
that. you approve resolutions to give the whole population marijuana consumption lounges. Yeah, you approve that too. That's what you're passionate about. Not basic human rights, certainly not Palestinian human rights, not jobs, not affordable housing, not any meaningful cleanup of the 50-year toxic Gelman plume.
Time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mojan Savabi Asafahani.
So I have to press star 6.
Caller phone number 941, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Mujgan Savabi Isfahani. Ann Arbor City Council wants you to believe they care about our health and our environment. Do they really? Is that why for 50 years, maybe 60, they have allowed the Gelman dioxin contamination of our waters to grow and become the largest in the world? Yes, you heard it right, the largest in the world. Your so-called concern for our environment is so deep that PFAS has continuously been oozing out of chai bar industries for at least several years, with you doing virtually nothing to stop it. Ann Arbor City Council wants us to believe they care about our quality of life. What big words. Is that why not one of them has ever proposed $15 minimum wage for people of Ann Arbor, for workers of Ann Arbor? Is that why you have never, none of you, proposed a $15 minimum wage for Ann Arbor workers? Is that why they bend over backwards to please developers who use city support and approval and throw a pittance to the city in the form of supposed affordable housing? Developers who plunder our resources and our environment to house the ultra-rich in their luxury apartments and leave the rest of us on the affordable housing waiting list. Affordable housing waiting list that's growing by leaps and bounds. What bullshit. You expect us to believe you? Ann Arbor City Council wants you to believe they are progressive and care about humanity and human rights. Nothing could be more laughable. Let's see now, is that why for 20 years you have blocked any resolution to boycott Israel? Is that why you have turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to cries of thousands of protesters throughout the years demanding that at the very least you should stop military aid to Israel? At least say that you are against military aid to Israel. Have you? None of you have. How do you want us to believe you're progressives and you care about human rights? You're liars. Ann
30
Arbor City
seconds.
Council record shows that it is a bunch of racist bastards masquerading as human beings. You, Ann Arbor City Council, are servants of the rich and wealthy in this town. Anyone who can't see that is either asleep or dead. Be warned, there are real progressives and real human rights advocates in this town who have been fighting for human rights and for cleanup of Gelman dioxin plume and for $15 minimum wage and for public housing. They are real human beings out here who really care about this. We
Thank
will
you.
fight you every election day in between them, and we will kick you out.
Thank you.
You passed a resolution that we are against military aid to Israel to at least
Thank you.
improve your atrocious record.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michelle Hughes.
Michelle Hughes? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Michelle Hughes, and today is a part of Trans Awareness Week that's going on until November 19th, and then on November 20th, it's the Trans Day of Remembrance, where we remember the trans people who were murdered this year in transphobic violence. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to come and ask you guys about some things that I asked about back in March and see if there's been any progress on that. I was hoping that we could have a new ordinance that requires businesses to post information about our non-discrimination ordinances in such a way that the posting is visible to customers and to employees, because I know too many trans people who have been fired from their jobs in Ann Arbor for being trans, or have suffered transphobic harassment and decided to quit their jobs here in Ann Arbor. And I know too many people who have been denied services for being trans here in Ann Arbor. And, you know, some people know that there's an ordinance in Ann Arbor that makes that illegal. Some people know that they can call the Human Rights Commission. Some people know that they can call the state Civil Rights Commission, but we can't really count on that. Our plan shouldn't be that people just have to know this stuff. Our plan should be that this information is posted at everywhere where it's likely to be a problem, and that's every business. And our plan should be that this will cause businesses to think twice before doing something like that, before being transphobic, and it will give people information about what they can do if they do experience discrimination. So I'm hoping to hear during comments from council, somebody tell me, or maybe email me later, that, you know, this is in the process somewhere, that, you know, maybe the lawyer's office is working on it, or maybe it's going to be discussed at a commission somewhere. I hope we've seen some progress about this since March when I asked for it in the first place. The other thing I was hoping to ask for today is that, so when trans people apply for a name change, one of the
30
things
seconds.
that we do is get our fingerprints and get a background check. We have to do that. We have to get our fingerprints at the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office, and that makes a lot of trans people nervous to go to the police office. And in Grandville, they do it right at the City Hall in Grandville. And I'm hoping we can do that here too. Get fingerprints right here at City Hall so you don't have to go to the police office when you're getting a name change. So those are my Trans Week of Awareness asks for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Steve Sontag.
Caller with the phone number 190. Press *6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So first I would like to thank and commend the Ann Arbor City Council and all the past City Council members who have enacted environmentally friendly policies. I really appreciate that. For instance, I love the fact that we can get behind a city bus and not have it spew toxic fumes into our face. You know, they're usually hybrid buses. And I love traffic circles that keep the traffic moving and cut down on air pollution. I do feel we're in a life and death struggle to stave off climate catastrophe. And to that end, I would like to make a small request regarding traffic lights. When I drive, sometimes I drive late at night, and some of the traffic lights flash yellow and or red, which is great, keeps traffic moving, cuts down on air pollution, but some of the other traffic lights are just cycling through their slow, boring, normal cycle as if there's heavy traffic. And it's 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm sitting there idling away, putting extra air pollution into the air for no reason. So I would really appreciate if somebody could please look into the traffic lights that are operating normally with their slow, boring cycles. And it would be great if we could eliminate those, have them flash red and or yellow to keep traffic moving and cut down on air pollution. I realize Ann Arbor can't save the world, but we, you know, in the future, we need to look back and say with a clear conscience that Ann Arbor did everything they could, even in small ways, to help stave off climate catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Glenn Nelson.
Mr. Nelson, phone number 733, go ahead.
My name is Glenn Nelson. I'm one of the leaders of Citizens for Mental Health and Public Safety. I applaud your attention to unarmed public safety response. I will make 2 points. First, city officials should recognize a 24/7 unarmed crisis response team already exists and serves Ann Arbor as well as the rest of the county. Washington County Community Mental Health provides this service. The telephone number is 734-544-3050. Based on information from the caller, the mental health professional who answers determines the appropriate response, choosing from options such as sending the CMH Mobile Crisis Services team or connecting the caller with the CMH Cares team, which acts as an information center and outpatient clinic, or sending emergency medical services, or sending police officers as backup or handoff. City officials should avoid duplicating services, which would create confusion and waste taxpayer dollars. Second, city officials should educate residents about using the existing crisis teams. Council members should fund a campaign to inform city residents about the CMH 24/7 number and other current and upcoming crisis initiatives like 988. Through the county, we residents of Ann Arbor have 24/7 access to unarmed mental health professionals, substance abuse experts, emergency medical technicians, and peer support specialists. Residents who feel unarmed police officers not needed or worse might escalate a manageable problem into a crisis should be calling 544-3050 rather than 911. This information is particularly important for residents who delay calling 911 based on past bad experiences with police. Everyone's safety would be improved by educating residents about calling 544-3050 promptly. The funds for this recommendation are readily available from the portion of the county mental health and public safety millage sent directly to the city.
30 seconds.
Such an education campaign would improve safety and would be consistent with the intent of voters who supported the millage. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Amir Fleischman.
Mr. Fleischman, go ahead, phone number 632.
Hi there. My name's Amir. I'm a grad student at I'm also a member of GEO's Housing Caucus. I'm calling today to talk about the total failure of the city to enforce the early leasing ordinance. GEO has received hundreds of complaints from renters who are still being pressured by their landlords to renew their lease less than 3 months into the term. Landlords are saying that they're signing options, quote unquote, with other residents. So they're getting around the early leasing ordinance by still entering into another form of agreement. They feel very strongly that the city is not reading the ordinance in a maximalist interpretation that could be used to protect renters. There is no urgency from the city about this humongous problem that is affecting the majority of your constituents. Indeed, things have gotten worse since the passage of the early leasing ordinance, as landlords are retaliating against us and pressuring us to renew our leases even earlier than they have in the past. Renters are hurting. Where the hell are you? Our activists should not be doing the work of combing through complaints and sending them to the city on your behalf. That's why we have a bureaucracy. use it to serve your residents. It is your job to go through the complaints. You need to be doing this, not us. We have jobs. My people are becoming cynical about working with the city. They no longer want to engage with local government because they see it as a waste of time. And frankly, I'm having a hard time justifying it to them. Is this the impression of civic engagement that you want to give to your residents? Renters cannot wait. Your residents are under assault by landlords and they're sitting here talking about traffic lights. Get a grip. What will you do to help renters now? We don't have time to wait for the commission. We are under assault. This is urgent. You need to act. Thank you. Free Palestine.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Amanda Carlisle.
Caller with the phone number 298, Amanda Carlisle. Press *6 to unmute your phone. Caller with the phone number ending in 298. Press *6 to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Amanda Carlisle. I'm the director of the Washtenaw Housing Alliance, and tonight I want to share my concerns with you about the new Human Services Partnership, which is replacing what we knew for the past decade as coordinated funding. I am urging you to extend Human Services transition grant contracts for at least another 6 months and to consider alternate funding models than what has so far been proposed by the county under the new Human Services Partnership. As background, the WHA is a coalition of nonprofit and government partners working to end homelessness in Washtenaw County. Our coalition members include the nonprofit agencies that provide a continuum of services and housing that help people obtain and maintain housing. Over the past decade, Washtenaw Coordinated Funders provided critical funding to nonprofit human services agencies in the amount of $4.3 million annually, and to the homeless system of care in the amount of approximately $1.3 million annually. These dollars have been used to then leverage other federal and private funding to support programs critically important to the people most in need in our community. The homeless system of care has relied on these funds to provide services like street outreach, single point of entry, emergency shelter, and permanent supportive housing and services. Our system of care relies on community partners thinking not as individual agencies or programs, but as a system, and it is focused on helping the most vulnerable people in our county. As a result of the services provided and coordination efforts, we have seen a reduction in the number of people experiencing unsheltered street homelessness by 78% since 2015, and a reduction in overall homelessness by 26% since 2015. Our progress in making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring will be completely upended with the new Human Services Partnership Program the way it is currently designed, because agencies will no longer have a reliable source of funding for the critical safety net services they provide. In an email I sent you earlier today, I shared with you a detailed timeline of the county's process and communications to nonprofit partners about the shift in the funding model. What I want to leave you with is this: communications and actions about the new funding model have been delayed time and time again over the past year. What was proposed to agencies by email on Friday is a shift from holding a safety net grant round this fall to an alternative process that excludes many critical supportive services and housing programs from funding. The county is changing the process at the last minute when critical safety net services are in jeopardy of having no funding in 45 days.
30 seconds.
The new Human Services Partnership seems to have been developed to circumvent a process that requires a formal RFP because county staff haven't been able to develop a new human services funding model. It's completely understandable that the county has not been able to devote the time and effort it needs to completely revamp a funding model that has been existed for the past decade. We are still in the middle of the pandemic and there have been competing priorities. Please extend contracts for at least another 6 months so that a more thoughtful and equitable approach to this new funding model can be developed. We all want this to work. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Ms. Beaudry, do I have hand authority? Thank you. Councilmember Griswold.
2 items tonight. The first one is I encourage you to join me Saturday at 10 o'clock starting at Liberty Plaza. The Hustle for Homeless event will occur. It will include speakers, a 2-mile walk, and then refreshments. Secondly, I kept hearing a theme tonight about communications, the need to improve communications. Whether it be an ordinance that we passed that people didn't know about, or communicating decisions that are being made. And something that I was thinking about even before the meeting that I find troubling, and it puts an extra burden on staff, is that we pass one ordinance or resolution after another, and we don't always communicate out or have a strong implementation plan, but there's conflicts between those ordinances at times. And so I think that we need to step back and look at how we can reduce those conflicts, be it A20, the transportation plan. And when we don't reduce those conflicts, people are confused. And once we get into a political season, then those issues are weaponized. For example, we just resurfaced Getty's Road between Huron Parkway and Earhart. I received a number of calls because people wanted to know, where's the sidewalk? If we have complete streets, we need sidewalks on that street. And of course, that's not practical. And there are many reasons why we didn't do it at this time, including Township Islands. But we do need safe passage. We need at least a shoulder of 6 feet to walk down there. And so in closing, I hope that we can focus on our communications, and when we do pass a new resolution or an ordinance, think about how we're going to communicate it and think about how it's going to fit with our existing resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Umlai.
Well, thank you and good evening, everybody. I just wanted to report out that I met with Councilmember Briggs and others from the County Mental Health, AAPD, Ann Arbor Fire Department, and others this afternoon to talk about the situation at Liberty Plaza. I appreciate Mr. Dehoney and others within City Hall who helped put it together, and will be coming back to us as a group in a few weeks, I hope, to hear what can be done in the short term and what needs to be done in the long term. We had a very good discussion with stakeholders and nearby tenants and people who manage properties. And it was made clear that there's an acute safety issue going on in our park. And so hopefully we can keep the momentum going and address the safety concerns that are real. Further, the ongoing and delayed Liberty Street water main replacement looks like it's almost complete. It looks like there just needs to be some cement or asphalt put down and reopen to traffic. I know that the neighborhood would be eager to get that back. There's many nearby schools, and that's a very heavily trafficked intersection that's been out of commission now for quite some time. So relief is on the way, and I hope by the weekend or this time next week it's fully opened. Thank you.
Councilmember Song.
I really appreciate folks calling in on behalf of social service agencies. I've been having really long discussions with folks. If you're familiar with how nonprofit agencies are funded, a lot of them begin their fiscal year in July, and not having a sense of being able to track timing and potential funding has put our community members at risk. I know our staff and county folks are working hard on this, and I'm really happy to hear that there'll be a resolution coming forward next month so that we can see where we can extend these contracts and make sure our most vulnerable folks are taken care of. I encourage our fellow council members and community members to take a look at who does this work on a daily basis. We've got HUC, we've got Ozone, for homeless teens. We've got a variety of folks who are rapid rehousing folks who would normally be out in the streets. So, and they're struggling because a lot of them are not being able to fundraise even at pre-pandemic levels. So I encourage folks to reach out and do what you can to support folks who are doing this work on a daily basis. Another update is that County Commissioner Andy LaBarre is submitting a grant request to extend, to participate in a pilot expansion with the state on childcare. So there's an application going in with where Child Care Network can participate in a tri-share program where employers would kick in a third, employees kick in a third, and the state would kick in the remaining third for childcare costs. So this is there are pilot programs in Saginaw schools, Traverse City, and Muskegon. We know how the childcare crisis has been really impacting all sectors in Ann Arbor. If you're an employer in the area who would consider participating in this, I encourage you to contact Andy LaBarre, and hopefully you can also join in this application. It's due on Wednesday, so contacting Andy LaBarre means between now and end of day Tuesday, but clearly this conversation will be ongoing. All right, thanks.
Councilmember Grand.
Thank you. I don't have too much to add to what Councilmember Song said, but I do just want to communicate in really clear language. I had some great conversations with directors of some of our safety net providers today, who were rightly in quite a panic, thinking about trying to provide these critical services to our most vulnerable residents, still during a pandemic in the winter, and not knowing 6 weeks from now if they would have funding. So I will be clear, while I am one of 11, I will do my best to work with staff and our partners at the county and our counterparts on the county commission to ensure that this funding is maintained, so that there's some stability over the next 6 months as we make this transition. Well, I won't speak for everyone at this table, I'll speak for myself. I do not want to see anyone out on the street in the cold. And I can't thank those who I spoke to today and those who are doing this critical work for what they do, for what their staff do. I want to make sure that you have that stability so that you can continue to have your excellent people do their good work in our community. So please be on the lookout for that resolution, the first meeting in December that I know staff is working hard on, and hopefully we'll have our support from the county as well. Thanks so much.
Are there further communications from council? As to the nominations, I'd like to recommend the following nomination for your consideration to the Local Officers Compensation Commission. Elizabeth Genovich. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Adina. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 11 council members present, all vote in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. I do have myself a communication. We have a climate emergency that we have declared, and that imposes upon us, I believe, a moral obligation to reduce carbon in our community. And to date, of course, we have not done enough, but we do have a plan. And that plan is A20. It is a plan adopted unanimously by council to transform our community to carbon neutrality in a way that is equitable, urgent, and effective by the year 2030. It's a plan to improve basic services and enhance quality of life for everyone in Ann Arbor today. Clean, reliable, affordable local electricity, a drive to zero waste through year-round composting and expanded recycling, weatherization programs in homes and businesses to save money and increase comfort, miles of new bikeways and pedestrian infrastructure, neighborhood resiliency hubs, aggressive EV support, and thousands of trees. But we do not have the resources to achieve this goal. Not yet. And that's why I am proud and incredibly excited to bring forward on December 6th the Community Climate Action Millage, a 1 mil, 20-year millage proposal to raise the funds necessary for everyone in Ann Arbor to enjoy the safety, comfort, affordability, and moral benefits of a carbon neutral community. The Community Climate Action Millage will cost the average homeowner about $4 a week, but the benefits that they will receive will be true value for the money. Citywide programs to reduce energy cost, increase comfort and safety, improve lives today. Every person alive now is going to spend more due to climate change. That is a fact. The question is whether that new spending will be an investment in our common future Or will that new spending bloat tenfold in a further degraded world? In Ann Arbor, we believe in science and value for the money. We believe in common action for a common purpose. And that's why I'm confident that Ann Arbor will support the Community Climate Action Millage in May 2022 to improve our basic services and enhance quality of life to achieve equitable, affordable, community-wide carbon neutrality. I am looking forward to the conversation. We have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of the consent agenda. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I'd like to pull CA2 and CA3.
Further discussion of the consent agenda? All in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA2 and CA3, please say aye. Opposed? The consent agenda with the exception of CA2, CA3 is approved with 11 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA9. CA2, resolution to award a construction contract for galvanized water service line replacement to SWT Excavating in the amount of $1,013,116.15 per year for a 2-year period in the amount of $2,026,223.30. Moved by Councilmember Nelson, seconded by Councilmember Regina. Discussion, please, of CA2. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions for staff. A resident reached out to me with their own estimate that the total cost of this project is likely to reach $19 million. And I'm just curious if, I wanted to hear a response to that. I also was curious, I appreciate that we're obligated to take care of 5% a year. Do we have an estimated timeline of when this would be achieved, like the whole of replacing all of these galvanized lines?
Yes, as you have said, we are required to do these. We are proceeding at slightly more than the 5% per year, which would be a 20-year time period. We have not fully completed our inventory yet to know whether what our exact number of these to be done, but yes, it is approximately $1 million a year as we take these on.
Okay, all right.
And it is unfunded. It has to come out of ratepayer dollars currently.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? CA2 is approved. CA3, resolution to support the Transportation Economic Development Fund's Category A grant for Research Park Drive, moved by Councilmember Nelson, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion, please, of CA3. Councilmember Nelson.
Thanks. Yeah, I was digging a little deeper in these numbers. I note also that this is in Ward 4. If the total, I appreciate that this is quite a large amount of money to get as a grant, which is wonderful. But the cost to the city is anticipated to be almost $1 million also. And I was just curious, I'm looking in my budget. It looks like the street, bridge, and sidewalk millage in 22 and 23 is going to be about like 16 million, $17 million. So do I have those numbers right? Am I reading correctly in the budget? Maybe you don't know off the top of your head how much money that is, but $1 million relative to the total of 16 or 17 million. I was just curious if we have an idea yet of what this is likely to displace in the capital improvements project.
Nick, you're on mute. Yes.
Yeah. I think as far as the numbers, I think the street, bridge, and sidewalk millage comes to about 13 million a year, if I remember correctly. In terms of what this would displace, I do not know that yet. What we would do is this project is in the capital improvement plan, but at an outer year, we would have to move it forward and just probably shift something back a year. I don't know exactly what that would be right now. We would wait until we see if we got the grant before doing that.
I mean, is it, how many, I guess my other question was, how many properties other than Sartorius are going to be served by this improved drive?
I believe there's about 30 or 40 properties on, although they're not all developed, I believe, on Research Park Drive. Yeah, I counted them recently. I think that's about right.
Okay. All right. I mean, I guess it's, yeah. All right. Thank you.
The need is there. The pavement condition is poor. And thus is why it was in the CIP for a future project.
Councilmember Hayner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Hutchinson. So I assume that this grant has some kind of sunset on the spending of it. So that's why we want to move this project forward. It's not just that, I know that's a terrible loop through there, but it's beyond just the need of this single person who's going to help us, or single corporation rather, that's going to help us apply for this grant. Like we have to spend it right away. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, we haven't gotten the grant yet, obviously, but yeah, once we get it, there is a limited amount of time to spend it in. And I believe it's within 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, I share others' concerns about displacement of projects when, you know, we send this stuff far out, and we certainly, I know there's a big boom going on out there. I've been doing some work out on the other side on Morgan Road and stuff, and it's really booming out there. There's a big push to get this area going again, and so it's appropriate. But he also has the perception that it's you know, a bit of favoritism as we start shuffling projects around. So I want to support applying for this grant, and I guess we'll deal with the shuffling when and if it becomes necessary. Thank you.
Councilmember Rumley.
Thank you. Appreciate staff being here to answer questions, and so I'll have one. How often do we get this type of grant? When was the last one? I apologize, didn't submit it as an agenda question, but seems to be kind of an unusual opportunity for us. But Nick, you've been with us for a long time. Maybe you would know how often one of these come around.
Not very often. I've been at the city for 15 years. This is the first one that I've ever done. So it is a very unusual opportunity that has come in front of us. And our thinking was that taking the opportunity to get an extra $1.6 million to invest in our road network is probably worth shuffling a little bit.
And what was the case here that made this possible, at least, for us to discuss it? What conditions are there that haven't been for 15 years in many other parts of the city?
Yeah, I'm learning quite a bit about this type of grant myself as I'm going through the process of putting the application together. And my understanding is that it's connected to a specific development or developments. And I'm not sure the details of how it generates, but we were initially approached by Spark coming through working with the development. And I believe the genesis of it was making the resurfacing of this road was helping it make more attractive to bring this development to the area. And that's the purpose of the TEDF grants from the state specifically.
Well, appreciate you here to answer those questions. Yeah, hopefully what we learn and what you learn more importantly will help us be more watchful for these type of opportunities if they do present themselves. I would ask questions on, our climate neutrality goals here. We talk about going with less induced demand for traffic and such, but we are paving roads here that will do perhaps just the opposite, but that's just a sidebar. Thank you.
Further discussion? I just want to say briefly, it's been suggested the word favoritism has been used here, and that, of course, connotes bad action. It connotes people not it connotes something that is outside of the usual process in a way that is not correct and unjust. And I just want to state clearly that that's not the case here. What we have is staff doing everything they can to ensure that they are saving Ann Arbor taxpayers money by finding a grant and applying for it in an effort to improve the roads, utilizing state resources that are available for the purpose, which is an entirely right and proper thing to do. Councilmember Griswold.
I will be voting for this, but I think we have to be aware that large business organizations are much more effective at advocacy than neighborhoods. And so hopefully we can get some federal funds to address our neighborhood streets that are in extremely poor condition. So it's always a balancing act. Again, I'm going to vote for this, but I hope that we recognize that neighborhoods cannot advocate as effectively. And so we as council members need to stand up for them. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, I just wanted to gently protest your analysis of my choice of words. I wasn't suggesting any kind of malfeasance on the part of staff or the city or the state. Just passing along what I often hear when projects get bumped, when large employers come to town, people get concerned that they have prioritization of over matters. Perhaps prioritization was a better word to use.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the item on the agenda to which the public hearing relates. To speak at a public hearing, you need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the subject matter of the public hearing. If you wish to speak at one of these public hearings, please enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you are connected further and you wish to speak at the public hearing, please enter *9. *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. Our clerk will identify you when it is your turn to speak by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. When it is your turn to speak, you'll have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, zoning, rezoning of 1.24 acres from TWP Township District to R2A 2-Family District, ISA Property 201 Scioto Church. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Caller with the phone number ending in 111. Press *6 to unmute your phone. Caller with the phone number 111. You need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Mayor, that caller hung up and I don't have any other callers with their hands up on the line.
I'm going to conclude that that was an error and hold out a bit.
Matt Will, did you have a comment?
Yeah, you did.
Caller with the phone number 111. Did you still have a comment?
Sorry, not for this item.
Thank you. Mayor, I
No
don't see any
worries.
callers with their hands up for this item.
Thank you. Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2, an ordinance to add Chapter 74 to Title 6 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, which shall be entitled General Health, and to add Sections 6650 through 6653, Sanitation Supplies and Public Restrooms. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Caller with the phone number 111. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity to speak today. My name is Quinn Pulasic. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a resident in the 3rd Ward. I'm also the student project manager for EMU Changing the Cycle, a student-led program that provides free period products through free runs dispensers in 8, soon to be 10 bathrooms on Eastern Michigan University's campus. As a non-binary person myself, I wanted to take a minute to thank Councilmember Medina for pointing out that not all people who get periods are women, which is one of the reasons that EMU Changing the Cycle has arranged for 7 of our 10 dispensers to be in gender-neutral bathrooms. I'm hopeful that Councilmember Rodina's advice will be taken and that products will be provided in all bathrooms, not just bathrooms designated for women. We founded EMU Changing the Cycle after learning that 1 in 10 women in college are unable to afford period products every month, and an additional 14.2% are occasionally unable to afford these products. These students are forced to decide between buying food or textbooks and buying the pads and tampons that will allow them to attend their classes or jobs without bleeding through their clothes. It's important to note that these numbers are from a survey conducted before the COVID-19 pandemic, so it's safe to say that period poverty is impacting even more people now. And it's not just college students who experience period poverty. People of all ages, genders, races, and backgrounds can struggle to afford these products, especially in a prolonged period of economic instability like the pandemic has caused. Last council meeting, some members were expressing concern about unhoused community members increasing the use of their bathrooms if these products were provided. And I definitely agree that more showering and shelter resources need to be provided for people, because I guarantee that no one is choosing to bathe in a restaurant bathroom if they have other options. But providing free period products cannot wait until that happens. They're needed now by people experiencing period poverty right now. And I'd also like to point out that providing free period products won't just help people who can't afford them, but also paying customers, these businesses. One survey found that 86% of people who menstruate had gotten their period unexpectedly in a public place when they did not have supplies with them. If restaurants and other businesses don't want potential paying customers to have to rush out before ordering because of an unexpected period, these products should be provided by these businesses. Having some pads and tampons in all bathrooms won't cost much, but it will make these public spaces more inclusive and welcoming for people of all genders and incomes. Please vote yes on this ordinance to ensure that these necessary products will be available for all people who need them. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number 865, press *6 to unmute your phone if you have a comment. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nancy Kramer. I would just like to reiterate all the points that our previous speaker made about this particular topic. This is an issue that I have been advocating for since the first time I went into the restroom at Apple's corporate headquarters in 1982, and I saw tampons and pads laying on the counter at Apple's corporate headquarters. And I thought to myself, why isn't every restroom like this? This makes perfect sense. A woman needs access to these items to take care, or any menstruating person needs the access to these items in order to take care of their normal bodily functions. As I said, I've been advocating for this since 1982. I've advocated for it in schools. I have a nonprofit around this. I advocate for businesses. I instituted policies in my own business, and I've actually been able to advocate that my current employer, IBM, institute this policy around the world for our 350 associates in 197 countries. Menstrual support products in all restrooms for anyone who may need them is a public health issue. It is what is right. It is what is going to provide equality. No one should be faced with the consequences of having an unexpected start to a menstrual cycle. The results can be humiliating, and the consequences are incredibly negative. I just want to say that I'm so happy to be here at this council meeting and say that it's very heartening to me, somebody who's been focused on this for a very long time, that Ann Arbor would be one of the first cities to institute this at this level. And I want to thank you for your support on this, and I hope that this measure passes. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this public hearing?
I don't
Seeing
see
no
any
one?
other callers at this time.
Thank you. Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 3, a resolution to approve Grace Bible Church site plan 1300 South Maple Road. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't see any callers with their hands up for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of November 1, 2021. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Ramalawi, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? The minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend section 55, an ordinance to amend chapter 55 zoning, rezoning of 1.24 acres from TWP Township District to R2A 2-family district. ISA property 201 Scio Church. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Nelson. Discussion, please, of B1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. B2, an ordinance to add Chapter 74 to Title 6 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, which shall be entitled General Health, and to add sections 6650 through 6653, sanitation supplies and public restrooms. Moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion, please, of B2. If I can, I just would like to say that I'm delighted that this is being brought forward and that we're going to be voting on it, and I believe passing it tonight. If you have a public restroom, there will be people, of course, who are going to use the toilet, and there should be toilet paper there available for all. If you have a public restroom, there will be people who want to wash their hands, and there should be soap and paper towels available for all. And if you have a public restroom, there are going to be people who menstruate, and there should be tampons and pads available for all. These products support basic human needs, and it is long past time that we as a society acknowledge and respond to that reality. We have met these needs, of course, as a general cultural matter with toilet paper and typically soap and towels, but we have not met this need with respect to menstrual products. It would have been good if that were the case. If it were good if that were a societal expectation, it is not. And so this ordinance is a necessity and is a long time coming. And I'd like to say, as I've mentioned before, that it would have been a longer time coming still if a high school student who knows who she is had not come to me a bit ago to discuss her concern that the less privileged in Ann Arbor had difficulty obtaining menstrual products. That conversation got me thinking, and so after some advances in menstrual product availability in Illinois and New York and California and Scotland, I asked staff to look into this to see whether we can affect this obligation, and we can, and I am confident that we will. Period products are a necessity for anyone who menstruates. Access to these items is a matter of personal dignity, a public health necessity, and a healthcare right. Too many struggle in Ann Arbor to obtain them, and I'm just so glad that we're gonna do something about it here today. It is the right thing to do, 100%. Councilmember Adina.
Thanks, Mayor, and I don't want to spend too much time reiterating all of the excellent points that you just made or those that we discussed last week. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you again and members of staff for leading on this, and also for the members of the public who called in and for their work in the community on this for years as well. Specifically, I did want to make sure that we emphasized one of the callers during the public hearing requested that this not be specific to only female gendered bathrooms. And that is not the case. This is required for all restroom facilities. And so we absolutely made that case during drafting this. And I know that the mayor made sure that this was available for anyone who may menstruate, not just in women's restrooms. Thanks.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thank you. I also would like to thank you and those who have advocated for this ordinance coming forward. I have to say, this is one of the ordinances that I have found to be a learning process for myself as well, despite the fact that I should have been a perhaps a bigger proponent of this earlier on. It took me a little while to actually get behind why this was so necessary, and I appreciated the opportunity to read and think through this a little bit more, and to challenge my own assumptions a little bit. I appreciate the need to end period poverty, and also sort of that recognition that there is an equity that we learn to live with. Certainly every woman has experienced this, and anybody who menstruates does. As that caller mentioned, this is every woman has experienced that humiliating feeling of being in a situation where they don't have the supplies that they need. And I'm glad to know that our community is going to be leading this forward and in ending that experience in our community.
Councilmember Griswold.
Yes, I hope that we will grow from this resolution and look at public restrooms in the downtown area, because I think that is really a human right. And it's embarrassing as a member of the Ann Arbor community that we don't have public restrooms in the downtown area. In addition, it puts an extra burden on the businesses that are in the downtown area. So I don't know what the next step is. I don't know if a resolution is needed, but we do need to have public restrooms downtown. Thank you.
Councilmember Amlali.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a few minutes and thank City Attorney John Reiser on all the work that he's put into this. He sent us a memo last week or 2 weeks ago, really outlining a lot that he discovered looking into this. In fact, we will be the first city in America to mandate this, not just one of, but the only. So I appreciate the work and the background that was given to us regarding this, the financial impacts that it'll have on businesses, and the differences in all the different products that are going to be required, that some are required only for restaurants that get inspected by the county. So enforcement will be a challenge. We know that. I don't think it'll be something that will be enforced like many other things, but I suppose it's necessary with an ordinance like this to have some sort of consequence to it. But I do believe that it hopefully will be a segue into the discussion of public restrooms. There was an article I haven't completed reading yet that was sent to me by a friend, which articulated the progressiveness of public restrooms in America at the turn of the last century. In the teens and the roaring 20s, when those public restrooms in cities were the hallmark of progressive political movement in America. So hopefully this, again, builds upon the discussions that we've had before. I've reached out to Mr. Mahoney already about this. So I'll follow back up after this meeting to begin discussions on public restrooms and to provide the basic humanitarian right for all people, for something they have every day of their life a need to. And I think the burden is too much on small businesses to accommodate so much of what our government fails to do. This is not going to put people out of business, but I think it needs to be noted that we need to have our own public restrooms as a municipality and not just put the responsibility on everybody else except for ourselves when it comes to providing these type of basic human rights and issues that affect us all. So, so I will go as far as to ask the clerk to add me as a co-sponsor to this resolution and the efforts and the hopes to really make it clear where I stand and where I want to go with things. So I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks. Just real quickly, yeah, appreciate moving this forward. And sometimes one thing builds on another, and by such means can we, work together to get good things done for the community. We started up a little conversation about the public restrooms, and I want to thank staff for providing the answers to some of the research that needed to be done on that, because of course we have hundreds of public restroom locations in the park system right now, and so I appreciate seeing that as part of the questions that went out around this this ordinance. And so yeah, definitely that's gonna keep moving forward, and we'll take a look at what we wrote. I had a few calls with some of the attorney staff on this, and yeah, we're going to move this to the next stage. I agree, it is our responsibility, and when we talk about the coordinated funding panic that has come across our desk today and other things, it's just one more thing we can do to to look out for everybody. So thanks for bringing this forward, and look forward to everybody giving some input on a public restroom situation generally. Thanks.
Councilmember Song.
Really encouraged that this work aligns with what's happening at the federal level too. Congresswoman Grace Meng of New York had introduced legislation back in May, hoping to advocate for states to be able to use federal grant funds towards supporting free menstrual products in schools, for shelters, colleges, and universities, incarcerated individuals, homeless shelters. Hopefully Medicaid can be used to cover menstrual products. If this bill passes, it would require large employers with 100 or more employees to provide free menstrual products in the workplace. And it would require all public federal buildings, including U.S. Capitol, to provide these products. So I see that we've got some work that was happening here at the state level too, getting rid of the taxes associated with menstrual products. And I'd like to see that we're working locally to align ourselves with this progressive work, where we are encouraging local business owners to invest in dignity. We talked about menstruation. I myself reached out to women like myself who lost pregnancies in public places and had to return to work. So it is a matter of dignity and not just poverty, period poverty. It's dignity and being able to return to work during your shift and be able to continue with what you can do with these challenges. So I've spoken to local businesses who have already done this ahead of the city. Have done this, the library has done this a year in advance of this. So I would like to think that this is not too much of a burden on local businesses, given the cost of period products. And given that if you have conversations with the library, even with the schools who are preparing to have this in all their bathrooms over the holiday break, if they can do that for a number of buildings throughout the district, I'm confident that our small business owners can follow suit and show real care for a sizable number of community members. Thanks.
Further discussion? Attorney Reiser was referenced, and that does give I guess first of all, I too would like to add my thanks to Mr. Reiser for his work, and also to recollect the outstanding work of Ms. Blake, formerly of the office, who was the first person involved in doing this working on this ordinance back in the spring. Further, I note that there is a suggested amendment in communication that has been distributed to the group, and I'd be grateful if, well, hold on, please. There is an adjustment to the amendment that was originally requested. So I have distributed to staff and to the clerk and to council an amendment which I think is being requested by staff, which if I infer correctly would not require going back to first reading. The amendment being in addition to section 652, section 2, which will then thereafter state a provision of this ordinance shall not apply to mosques, temples, churches, and other places of worship for whom compliance with the provision would conflict with the entity's sincerely held religious beliefs, practices, or observances. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Amlawi, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Is that friendly to the body? Friendly to the body. Thank you very much. Mr. Reiser, thank you. Further discussion. I guess I'll just follow up and say that well, I still have the floor a little bit on this. I'm grateful that, again, the work that is being done by staff, as has been noted, this is, to our knowledge, the first of this sort of requirement in the country. And it's my earnest hope that others swiftly follow suit. Councilmember Song.
At our last meeting, I'd asked to be the sponsor to this resolution, and I don't see it reflected. So, Ms. Boudry, if you could help me. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just was wondering what, I mean, I don't have a problem with this whole thing. I think it's awesome, and I appreciate your resolution. I was just trying to understand where that was coming from. I didn't know that there was such a thing, that a church or a religious belief, that because it's a distribution of a product, or I'm just not sure where that's coming from. I think it's fine if it seems appropriate, but I just had never heard of such a thing. So I was trying to educate myself.
The reference is in Mr. Reiser's memo.
Yeah, I didn't. Okay, I'll take another look. I missed that. That went right over that one. All right, thank you.
All in favor? The Councilmember Alawi.
Perhaps for our viewing audience and others, Mr. Reiser is comfortable in explaining and answering Councilmember Hayner's question as to this amendment and why it was brought forward.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a hard time hearing Councilmember Hayner. So Jeff, could you repeat the question a little bit louder, please?
Well, I think just what Councilman Ramali just said, maybe it's sort of a question that the public might ask, why we would add that to the resolution, if you can say.
Well, without getting too much into the legal memo, different religions, different cultures treat menstruation differently. And there are sometimes religious preferences for one type over another, and it might be against the religion to provide one type or the other. So the amendment that you have kind of allows the free exercise of religion while still mandating the law generally. The most recent amendment allows, them to take a look at the provisions of it. There probably aren't religions that I know of that are against toilet paper or soap, but there are certainly prescriptions against one type of menstrual product over the other. And that's the genesis of the suggestion for that amendment.
And if I could add to that, this is, in houses of worship. So that the properties that, people congregate, those are the restrooms that are being discussed. So, I will just say that is a distinction. Now, what people do in their own homes and everywhere else is different.
Further discussion?
Other than Mr. Postema thinks that the my boss thinks for whom compliance maybe should be for which compliance. So I want to get it grammatically correct.
We'll count it as a scrivener's error.
Okay.
Or maybe a scrivener's improvement. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55 Unified Development Code zoning of 32.6 acres from R3 Township Dwelling to R4B Multifamily Dwelling, Mill Creek Townhomes rezoning 3002 Chelsea Circle, moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion, please, of C1. Councilmember Dish.
I just wanted to say a couple of things about this project. I'm sure it leapt out to all of you, but this is an infill project. That's very exciting. We don't see very much of this. And this infill project, if it is approved, will provide 3 30-unit, 3-story buildings. And it will use existing utilities to achieve greater density. And it will also create relative affordability, both by virtue of the location of this project, which is definitely not in the center of town, and also the size of the new proposed apartment units. Currently, this Mill Creek development has mostly two-bedroom townhomes, a few 1-bedrooms, and a couple of 3-bedrooms. The proposal here is to provide 1-bedroom apartments. And so there is affordability just built in of that. The project will be significantly upgrading the stormwater retention management. Right now, there is minimal stormwater treatment, as is the case in so many of our properties. And so this, the developer is proposing 2 new underground detention systems, which will have a controlled release to the city storm via Mallett's Creek. They have to do this because they're on clayey soil, and so they cannot they release through our storm system. They are they have added additional parking since Planning Commission saw this proposal, and we're grateful for that. And then they have, as you know, requested and been granted a variance from the EV ordinance. And if people have questions about although I think I have all the math right, I encourage you to ask staff if you have questions or concerns about the EV ordinance variance. So Planning Commission was happy to see this. I'm delighted to see it come to council, and I hope we can pass it.
Further discussion? Councilmember Hayner.
Sorry, I'm having difficulty with my alternative reading screen here. So this is the first reading on this rezoning, or this is it because it's a rezoning and site plan together before us? This is it? Can anybody answer that question?
It's a first reading.
It's a first reading.
Okay, this is first reading, right? Okay. Well, obviously I'm going to pass along. I guess I'll get my questions in about the EV. I have some concerns and considerations about that. I know people really are interested in having that be integrated. A curious constituent of mine had pointed out something to me interesting about this, and what Councilwoman Dish was saying about their smaller units, they have some affordability, and I think there is a need to have a mix of these types of unit sizes, or number of bedrooms in units all around our city. And something that was interesting was that one of the things we had was different ways to look at things always. And we can, it's possible that we also need people to consider putting more people in the same amount of space, right? And so, we have somebody will have a big 3-4 bedroom house, there's only 1 or 2 people living in there, and so on. And so I don't know how we can get around to encouraging that kind of behavior. But it's a uniquely American thing to be bouncing around a giant house that costs a lot to heat. And so I appreciate the smaller scale of this project, I guess, to come around to that, and it's going to support it moving forward.
Further discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry, Councilmember Amlawi.
Yeah, just real quick. First reading again, looks very promising. As my colleague stated, this is an attractive infill project to increase density in areas that aren't the most congested already or expensive to build. Really has many of the features we're looking for, and hopefully, you know, this passes and we have more discussion on it at second reading. But no big red flags anywhere about this, and hope that there is more projects like this that we can see in the future, but it's probably unlikely. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C2, ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 0.61 acres in PUD, Planned Unit Development District 2, PUD, Planned Unit Development District, Casa Dominic's Development, PUD zoning and supplemental regulations, 800, 812, 814 Monroe, 705 Oakland, 700 and 706 Tappan. Moved by Councilmember Grant, second by Councilmember Radina. Discussion, please, of C2. Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you. Again, another first reading here. Usually you don't have objections with supporting things to second reading, but in this case, you have staff recommending denial, 8-0. Since we have staff here, perhaps they can paraphrase and articulate in 3 minutes or so what the concerns are, why this is being recommended to be for denial. It'd be really hard pressed for me to go against something that has such a unanimous, recommendation from staff. So I apologize, but if it's available, if I can have an executive summary or a synopsis of why that's the case for the rest of us in the public.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Matt Kowalski, city planner. So I can give you guys a kind of a brief background really on the history. So the current PUD, as I mentioned earlier, when one of the public hearings, it is one of our original PUDs in the city. However, in about, I think it's 2009, they did a major revision to the PUD ordinance for this property. The whole Casa Dominic's kind of conglomerate of properties in that area there were all brought together under our PUD zoning. And at the time, it was, that was kind of the mechanism they were planning some expansions, other things within the Casa Dominic's area. And the previous PUD did not allow certain expansions. So while the plan was there again for those, we had to open up the supplemental regulations, which are the zoning regulations for this particular group of properties. So within that regulation, this is part of what's debated at really initially council, and then obviously final approval by planning commission first and final approval by council. So but back in 2009, one of the big concerns through this debate was, again, kind of a public benefit. As you know, PUD needs to provide public benefits. While it's a great mix of uses, it's kind of a creative, everybody kind of likes that use. The public benefits are areas that they were looking to expand upon. One of the concerns that was noted at that time was pedestrian access. It's obviously a heavily pedestrian-oriented area where a lot of traffic in that area and really potential conflicts. So part of to make it more user-friendly, to allow, make it more pedestrian-friendly, was looking at some of the curb cuts that service this site. Currently there's, I believe, like 4 curb cuts that come in kind of in different parts of the property. Now, again, remember there's different buildings that are part of this, but the concern was trying to limit potential conflict points and eliminate some driveways as a part of the public benefit. So those were debated among planning commission, ultimately city council. So the supplemental regulations that were agreed upon in 2009 were regulations that effectively required them to close a curb cut. So basically when site plan, when they go forward with any kind of site plan that triggers on the property, they're required to close curb cuts because that's what the zoning district now says for that. They can have a maximum of 2 curb cuts for that property. It doesn't necessarily say which curb cuts have to be closed, but it says 2. But as part of when planning, I'm trying to go a little bit quicker through this, but then, so again, some of the curb cuts, and as we know, one curb cut in question, which is really what we're debating now, is adjacent to 700 Tappan, which leads to kind of a parking area in between the building and Monroe. And then that's part of it. And it also leads to a parking space directly behind 700 Tappan. So that was a space that Planning Commission debated about and agreed that that was probably the most logical to be removed. It's near the corner, again, near the patio of Dominic. So there could be a lot of pedestrian traffic in that area. And as part of so when 700 Tappan came in as a provisioning center, they are still required, well, they were at the time in provisioning centers now, are required special exception uses. As part of that special exception use, it has to go to Planning Commission with a site plan. Planning Commission, as part of their approval of that special exception use back in 2010, near 2009, as part of the approval of that, required that that curb cut be closed. So that's part of the special exception use for the provisioning center that's now approved, was removal of that curb cut and restoration of that area. So that is the basis that staff. So as of where we sit today, basically they had a special exception use, which required that curb cut to be removed and restored. And but the PUD zoning regulations for that complex require a maximum of 2 curb cuts, which is not in compliance, which are not in compliance with right now. So staff, in looking through the revision, we looked heavily to Planning Commission, who had a lot of feedback on this. Their feedback was pretty, I'm trying to look at it, it's pretty aggressive, meaning that the pedestrian conflicts were their biggest concern of safety. So that was the basis of staff's denial, looking at the original special exception use, looking at the amount of emphasis that Planning Commission put upon pedestrian safety at that location. So that is why when they came in to leave that curb cut open and to not touch anything in that area, that is why staff said that's not consistent with the approved special exception use, and it's not consistent with the original Planning Commission motion about pedestrian safety and trying to improve it in that area. So I hope through my long-winded I apologize for that, but it was kind of important to touch on a little bit of all that history. So we looked back basically in the written record of Planning Commission to make our recommendation.
Thank you. Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. And I want to thank planning staff, particularly Mr. Leonard, who walked me through some options today. I think that the question that Councilmember Malawi posed, why would anyone be opposed to this? Because I talked to the owner of the property. I looked back at the history. I was like, well, he didn't follow the rules a couple years ago, and now it just seems to be coming around, and there are good reasons for pedestrian safety why you should be doing this. Is that we're trying to balance this desire for pedestrian safety and benefit with access for a resident, and I believe we all received an email from that resident today. So in closing this curb cut, it means that the resident will no longer have vehicular access, at least to where she lives and where she's lived for the past 10 years. So in trying to balance that and speaking with staff today, I did come up with an amendment. Again, I think this is something that I really personally struggled with back and forth because I think there are pros and cons to both sides. But in speaking with staff, and again, they were not trying to tip their thumbs on the scale one way or the other, but saying if you were trying to balance this out, what would this look like if you were to keep the curb cut? And the recommendation I received is an amendment that I sent out earlier today to all of council and to Ms. Beaudry. And what it does is, instead of recommending that there are rain gardens, that it requires all impervious surface between 700 Tappan and Monroe Street to be removed. So it would remove parking on the Tappan Street side as kind of a compromise. So I'm going to move that amendment and
Can you read that
hear
into the
from
record?
colleagues. Yes, sorry, I thought I did, but I'll read it again. So it says that, oh, that's the wrong amendment. I apologize. I apologize, I just had it. It says all impervious surface between 700 Tappan Avenue and Monroe Street shall be removed.
And that is all, and in addition, strike all the language with respect to rain gardens.
Strike the language with rain gardens.
Is there a second?
And that doesn't mean where the building sits.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Hayner. Is that friendly to the body? Got, I'll roll through the queue with Radina.
Thanks. I'm gonna speak on both of these since they're related. I am incredibly sympathetic, I think, to the property owner in this case, largely because of the tenants that reside at this property and the business next door. And so, as Councilmember Grand indicated, there is a tenant who has lived here for over a decade, and really due to some medical requirements for that individual, removing a driveway to her residence would be pretty detrimental to her. She actually indicated to me that she would likely need to relocate. And so that's not something that I'm willing to do here. I recognize that there is some tangible pedestrian benefit to removing this curb cut, but my understanding is also that this agreement was triggered by a site plan that actually didn't make any changes to the site, but rather it was more of a requirement of the need to get a dispensary permit approved for Green Planet. And so I'm going to be supportive of the overall change or of the amendment here, but I'm also to Councilmember Grand's amendment specifically, I'm willing to support this, I think, to move it along to second reading and get us to a public hearing where we can hear more from the public and from the property owners as well. This actually, the amendment that Councilmember Grand is putting forward is actually reflective of the largely of the agreement that Green Planet proposes in the attached letter to our packet. That's actually what, so the business that benefits from those parking spaces actually supports removing those parking spaces. I have spoken to the property owner. I think he maybe has a difference of opinion there. And so I think that's something that will likely need to be worked out between the landlord and the tenants. But in this case, I'm willing to move this forward for the sake of public hearing.
Councilmember Griswold on the amendment.
Yes, does this amendment preserve the curb cut, or it has nothing to do with the curb cut?
It would preserve the curb cut.
It would preserve it.
It's
okay.
Taking some parking out to leave the curb cut in.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to clarify that the curb cut would be left. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. I don't support this, not based on the information that we've gotten from our city planner, the auspices of the agreements that were put in place in 2009, the fact that there's other curb cuts that could be taken out. This isn't the only one. So we're not, I would be okay with it if it was, I mean, obviously it wouldn't even be a discussion or amendment if they were addressing a different curb cut. But we pride ourselves on pedestrian safety, especially this council, and Vision Zero. And this amendment flies in the face of almost everything I've heard for about at least a year, going on more, when it comes to our Vision Zero goals. And there's other curb cuts that can be removed. This isn't the only one. I did receive that email just like everybody else. But government makes sausage. It's not a clean, pretty site. And I don't want to be cold and callous to the individual that's affected by this. But I really have an issue with making exceptions on the fly in cases like this where we have overriding goals and principles that guide our city and our staff. And this is one that I don't see enough justification in order to make an exception that allows the curb cuts to continue to exist in the number that they do, while we impose all sorts of disruption and hardships on all sorts of businesses and people and residents throughout the city every other week when we come together. So I don't see how we can save credibility or face and have this exception. And then, you know, when it comes to other folks in a subsequent meeting or a prior meeting, we follow a very stringent line and interpretation. So I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of competing interests here, and somebody's going to be leaving disappointed, but based on our policies and based on the evidence and the articulation of the situation, I find it very troubling to even bring this amendment forward.
Councilmember Dish.
I, in my capacity as representative to and of the Planning Commission, I won't be voting yes on this amendment. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of context why. I understand the balancing, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for others to vote on this amendment. But it is not just, the issue here is not just about this curb cut and the tenant. The issue is also that this property, the parking that we're talking about, was not in the site plan. And so at some point in the, I think, well, at some point at which nobody is sure when it happened, Dominick's or the Green Planet paved over a grassy area to create a parking lot. And when they came to planning for the special exception use for the marijuana dispensary, planning said, "What's that? That's not on your site plan. We want you to remove that." And so they made removal of this asphalted area, which did not seem to be on the original site plan for the PUD. They made that a condition for the SEU, as well as removal of the curb cut. And I think specify the Monroe Street curb cut, but Mr. Kowalski can verify that or tell me I'm wrong about that. And then the issue is that they come back 2021 saying, well, we really don't want to remove the curb cut. So could we build a rain garden instead? Planning Commission Google Street View and said, but you still have the parking lot. We told you not to keep that. So I think it is a great idea to force their hand on removing the parking, but I can also tell you that Planning Commission has been asked to look at this twice, and twice said, no, we think we should enforce the PUD, and we think we want to enforce the special exception use. And it was particularly irritating to Planning Commission, which I think is understandable, to find the petitioner, you know, after having been accommodated with a special exception use, to have the petitioner come back and not having addressed the issue of the parking that they had installed, which doesn't appear to have been warranted by any plan or code.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I need some clarification because I was able to watch one of the Planning Commission discussions on this issue, but I didn't end up having time to watch the previous one. I'd like to ask staff for verification. This paved area didn't previously exist, or we don't know when it originated?
More or less, we don't know exactly when it originated. It was, I mean, we can look back in our photos and it's been there for a while, but looking back to the original site plan way back there, it wasn't on there, but our photos only go back so far, but it's been on there for at least probably 20 years or so, I think.
Okay, so like 20 years, okay. A couple of things. I also spoke with this property owner, and the challenge of this PUD being negotiated with expansion in mind, and the curb cut removal also being part of what was an expansion anticipated that didn't end up happening. That's what's troubling to me in terms of what we're calculating as this conflict between vehicular traffic and pedestrians. And I really want to point to an example. Of course, we do on principle discourage this kind of a parking situation. This is a very small area. This is not, I think probably 2 cars could fit in it. And when I visited it, there was no car in it. It was just basically a driveway leading to this apartment. I can point to Ward 4 as a really remarkable example of where we are just identifying a public benefit and accepting a very huge conflict between vehicular traffic and pedestrians, and that's York. There's a lot of parking right in front of there, like right on top of the sidewalk. And we've determined that that is a public, we like York, and so we're gonna allow that to happen. And this particular street, while it is a high pedestrian traffic area, like how many cars go down it an hour? I mean, and how many cars are likely to be going down this driveway? I mean, I am really grateful that decisions like this do get an extra stop at council for a second look, because while I appreciate Planning Commission's desire to impose these standards in a stricter way, I mean, this is an opportunity for us to step back and think a little bit more carefully about, you know, can we exercise a little bit of common sense here? As I understand it, it's proposed that the petitioner, the property owners propose, like, fine, we don't need parking, we'll put planters up to block it so that it's not parking anymore. And I'm conflicted about this amendment. I'm not really sure of like whether we're forcing them to go to some great expense to rip this up, and what's the purpose of that. This to me is not, it's not hard to allow a little bit of flexibility here. Thanks.
Councilmember Briggs, Councilmember Medina on the amendment, and then perhaps we can take that to a vote. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I appreciate Councilmember Dish's explanation of what's happened at Planning Commission. I think while I appreciate the source of and desire behind putting forth these amendments, I am not supportive of them. I think it's these types of discussions and are best left at the Planning Commission level. And I think particularly this discussion is one that's happened multiple times at Planning Commission, and we have a recommendation coming forward to us, both denial from staff and denial from Planning Commission. And so furthermore, beyond that, I don't think that we can make our decisions, as much as we want to look out for individuals within our community. That's not when we make planning decisions, we're really looking at holistically how we want our community to look moving forward for the future, not specifically for an individual tenant. And while I feel for this individual tenant, I don't think that that is the best way for us to make decisions about what's the best design for our community.
Councilmember Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify a couple of things. One that I think I heard Councilmember Remlawi bring up about kind of additional curb cuts that could potentially be removed. I'm looking at the map, and I believe all of the curb cuts service residential facilities. And so I just wanted to add that in as well. Yes, there is the potential that a different curb cut could be removed, though this one was likely identified because it is the least number of tenants that would be using it. I actually think that also maybe makes the argument that Councilmember Nelson did, which is that it's probably not very trafficked and may not actually be providing that much of a pedestrian benefit to remove it. I also just want to briefly, I appreciate my colleague Councilmember Briggs's perspective that, you know, this is we don't want to be making decisions for individual residents, but I do think it's important to factor in, and this is, I think, why these decisions do sometimes come to council, where, you know, we are a little bit closer to the residents as elected officials, because this is an instance where, you know, the largest impact of this would be to an individual, a resident who lives on this site, who has medical needs requiring her to be able to drive to her driveway. And the reality is that due to a site plan that was submitted quite some time ago, likely maybe even before she lived there, we would be removing that from her home. And I am incredibly sympathetic to that. I think that, you know, the compromise that Councilmember Grand is putting forward, for the points that that Councilmember Nelson made, I'm going to support this, and I will support the original either way. Thanks.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. You know, we again discuss going more towards a community and a culture that is not car oriented. And yet we're making this exception here based on the one email that we received. And I don't want to come off crass and cold and unsympathetic, but I appreciate Councilmember Briggs's reminder that we make decisions based on the collective whole, the greater good, and not based on individuals. I mean, we constantly have issues where we have people who protest decisions that we make that greatly affect them, but we go full steam ahead. So to start making exceptions is I think a slippery slope. And I don't support this. I won't support it tonight. I won't support the main motion. And furthermore, this is extremely heavily student trafficked area, pedestrians. You have Ross, you have the business school, you have the economics school there. You have quite a bit of people walking, thousands daily, unlike Packard Street, where York is at. And not to discredit the safety concerns that we have there, but it's a apples to oranges comparison when you're talking Monroe and Tappan and over there on Packard. That's just not the same type of activity. That's central campus with thousands of students on an hourly basis. So again, I just want some consistency in our applications of our policies. That is what's driving my my no vote on this issue. Thank you.
Discussion the amendment. Roll call vote, please, on the Councilmember Grand.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to a couple of things that were said at the table. One, it wasn't done on the fly. It was done in consultation with planning staff. And in thinking about a compromise and thinking about public benefit in terms of the PUD, that removing this much impervious surface from my perspective was a greater benefit potentially than removing a curb cut that one car comes in and out of maybe a couple of times a day. I'm highly aware of the pedestrian traffic that goes through there, but I don't think that there's a lot of conflict. So, you know, again, it was something that I struggled with and really was trying to come up with a solution for this particular resident, because it is such an unusual policy. I'd love for us to get away from PUDs probably altogether, because I do think they end up causing a lot of problems and additional review like we're seeing tonight for something that's relatively minor. Again, I can see where reasonable people would come down on either side, but it wasn't something that I just came up with sitting here this evening. It was done in consultation and with some thought behind it.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks. I appreciate the effort to come to this sort of trade-off. I mean, it made perfect sense to me. I don't fully understand the process of bringing an amendment to this kind of document that's before us, but I think it's the right, I have a hard time thinking it's not the right thing to do. It just seems fully appropriate when you look at the total amount of impervious surface and everything we have going on with everything all over the city. This is I mean, I won't downplay people's legitimate concerns about process here, but I think that this is, I'm going to support this amendment. I think it's a gesture that shows that, you know, the city hall isn't all one way. It's not all black and white, and that we can appreciate that there are existing conditions that we need to be sensitive to. And I think it's a decent effort to look for, you know, a good compromise by removing another, you know, we were getting some benefits from it. So I'm going to support it. Thank you.
On the amendment, roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Hayner on the amendment.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dish,
No.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Song,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Medina,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs,
No.
Councilmember Ramlawi,
No.
motion carries.
Further discussion of the main motion. Be mindful that this is first reading. Councilmember Dish.
Yep, I'll just be very quick. I want to assure all of you that I want to make sure that you understand also that council can change the PUD by making the vote, by voting yes on this, but it will still have to go back to the Planning Commission to talk about the special exception use. And Planning Commission might not want to approve that, but I want to let you know that I am taking notes on everything that you are saying, and I will convey to them your views and why you voted as you did and what signal you are trying to send. So I just wanted you to know that. And I'm not going to vote yes on this.
Councilmember Griswold.
Yes, I think that this conversation demonstrates what I was talking about earlier tonight about conflicting resolutions. We want affordable housing. This one unit provides it. We want inclusion in our community. We have a resident who needs a driveway close to her door for medical reasons. We want mixed use. This is done. We talk about pedestrian safety, but I feel like we slap that term on whenever it's convenient. We have a new medical, well, it's a marijuana dispensary, I don't know if it's just medical, on the corner of Yost and Washtenaw. There are curb cuts there. One of them is within 50 feet of the intersection, and the other one is within 100 feet. There are many disabled pedestrians crossing Washtenaw there. It is extremely dangerous. And so if we really want to focus on pedestrian safety, let's have a serious talk about pedestrian safety. Let's talk about sight distance so we can actually see around the corners. Let's talk about street lights on all of our crosswalks so we can see pedestrians. And let's not cheapen the term pedestrian safety by slapping it on when it really is not the issue. Thank you.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Well, curb cuts intersect pedestrian safety. It's just a matter of fact. I have a question for our legal department or maybe our planning staff, whether there's obviously this one resident who has triggered this amendment, whether there could be some sort of conditional agreement placed on everything that's going on. It's getting deeper and deeper here with this specific site, that once this resident were to vacate that property, that we would eliminate that curb cut. Does that get way too complicated and unenforceable, or other things that need to happen after this vote? Is that something that can be incorporated in the conversation and the decisions that are being made on whether there could be a conditional arrangement made as to when that tenant were to move out, we could eliminate that curb cut?
Good evening again. I can answer part of that. Obviously, I'm not the legal department, but I don't think I can speak from our planning and zoning point of view that would be one, I guess I'd let our legal department see if it's legal, but two, it would be very difficult to enforce because we have no way of knowing when that resident would move out, and that could So I could just say, I think that would be an extremely difficult thing to enforce, if not impossible, amongst our planning and zoning staff. So I don't know how we could, and then I'll leave the legal aspects to our legal team.
I'm sorry, thank you, Matt, for responding. Could we perhaps put like a 5-year provision on this agreement, something that where this comes back to council at some point, so this, this issue can be resolved, amendment to the supplemental agreements that were made in 2009, anything that can be done to address that?
Not a timing limit, sorry, within the code, we couldn't put like an expiration on the zoning or something. No, we could not do that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Hayner.
This is on the main motion.
My apologies. Thank you very much. This is on the main motion as amended, as I recollect.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dish,
No.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Song,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Redina,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs,
No.
Councilmember Ramlawi,
No.
motion carries.
DB1, resolution to approve Grace Bible Church Site Plan 1300 South Maple Road, moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Ramlawi. Discussion, please, of DB1. All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. DC1, resolution to continue electronic meetings for certain city boards and commissions after December 31, 2021, moved by Councilmember Griswold, second by Councilmember Grand. Discussion, please, of DC1. This, of course, comes to us from the Administration Committee in response to changes to the Open Meetings Act that will become effective December 31, 2021, which will have the effect of prohibiting the certain meetings electronically. And those are listed in the resolution. In my view, these changes to the Open Meetings Act, which are coming online on December 31, are deeply unwise. We have it within our power to affect public meetings with 100% safety, and we are not going to be allowed to do that. We have it within our power to affect public meetings with essentially 100% accessibility, and we're not going to be allowed to do that. We have it within our power to affect public meetings with functionally 100% transparency, and we're not going to be able to do that because the legislature in its wisdom has put into place measures which are going to require us to meet in person. It is contrary to the health of members of the body, members of the public, and members of staff to obligate these meetings. It is contrary to access to meetings. Remote meetings, we will be able to have remote meetings, which we will be able to have in-person meetings, which will have some in-person access and some remote access, but other boards and commissions will not. And that is going to diminish the ability of members of the public to access these things. Remote meetings are effective, remote meetings are accessible, they are transparent, and they affect public business in a way that is 100% COVID safe. It's my hope that the legislature will, over time, have a change of heart and will allow us to make this local decision on how to conduct our business in a manner that is safe, effective, open, transparent, and fully accessible. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I appreciate your remarks, and I guess I have some questions, I think, for staff about how this is moving forward. I think I heard you say, Mayor Taylor, that some of our boards and commissions would have some kind of hybrid access and some would not. And I know that this has been a topic of discussion at the Commission on Disabilities Issues. Some of our members prefer being in person because the visual it's just harder to navigate some of the technology. On the other hand, it's easier for other, there are trade-offs. Did have some discussion, and I believe it was here as well as the Commission on Disabilities Issues, about preserving people's ability to attend remotely. Have we gotten any further in terms of us figuring out a way to establish an in-person meeting where people still can access remotely?
Mr. Fournier?
Yes, the answer to that question is we have. The technology solution that we put together for that is a little complicated. And it can only be put into effect in the city council chambers at this moment. And so what we're recommending at this point is that the hybrid meetings be allowed for city council and the planning commission only for the time being, so that we can test the technology out and essentially troubleshoot ways that it can be administered in a more seamless fashion and potentially rolled out to other boards and commissions.
Did you consult with any of the boards and commissions about their preference to being in person or on a virtual?
We have not done a survey at this point, no. The hybrid capability was developed working between the city clerk's office, IT, and with Brett Leonard and the Planning Commission. And between those individuals, the hybrid meetings were developed, but we have not done a survey of boards and commissions to see who prefers to meet in person or who would prefer to meet in a hybrid format or who would prefer to meet virtually.
Well, I mean, I guess I'd just like to throw out there, because it was a specific topic of discussion at the Commission on Disabilities Issues, that this should visit that body if not no other, just because we literally are talking about accessibility issues there. And I guess my only other question, and it's personally relevant for me because for the first time since the big pandemic started, I found myself in quarantine this week. And so I guess the hybrid model, is that going to apply to council members? If I find myself in quarantine again, am I going to miss a meeting, or is there going to be an opportunity for me to participate?
The state law after December 31st will not allow elected or appointed members to participate virtually. So if you aren't able to attend physically, you will not be able to attend the meeting.
All right, I guess I'll tighten up my mask then. All right, thanks.
Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Fournier, and really Mr. Taylor, Mayor Taylor, for saying that, what you said about that. I kind of have to agree. As you know, I was an early mask advocate, and I'm not thrilled by this notion that we have to be there in person, and we can do all we can for our own health and for the community's health, but then anybody can walk in there and just go ahead and be there in the room with us and so on. It doesn't seem optimum for public health. But, I also appreciate that we have to comply with the state rules, and, this is what we're going to do. And thanks for looking at ways to do it. I share your concern, and Councilwoman Nelson, that it's just sort of an odd thing we've had put upon us here. And I want to thank staff and the legal team for their answers to the many questions. I got a lot of questions from constituents about it. It's just a curiosity, I think. And, we'll see how it goes, and hopefully we can continue to act in a way that protects the health of ourselves and our community. So I don't know what to say. It's not a great situation. I think that we are doing a fairly decent job of meeting remotely here and trying to be open, and the staff's been very supportive of that. Again, thank you for that. So,
Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. And without spending too much time reiterating points, I think it's just interesting that we find ourselves here again from this table, disappointed with the Republican legislature that is not extending this frankly public health measure to allowing us to continue to meet remotely. And so I just wanted to use my time to encourage residents to contact elected officials in Lansing and tell them to reconsider. I don't have much faith in that, given some of the legislative leadership, but I appreciate all that we're doing locally to mitigate this as much as possible. Thanks.
Councilmember O'Malley.
Thank you. I appreciate the concerns and questions and thoughts and issues that colleagues have raised over the many months regarding COVID and electronic meetings and OMA. From my understanding, meeting with our Assistant City Administrator and others during the admin meeting, we are one of the only handful of elected bodies in the entire state of Michigan that still currently meets electronically. So we've been afforded that opportunity and that comfort and have exercised it to its fullest extent. I will just say for the last 19, 20 months, my occupation has not given me that comfort. I've had to show up and work through this whole thing each and every day. And now it's not something going around just beating my chest about. Look at me, I'm Superman. But at some point, people got to get on with getting on. And I look forward to meeting in person. I think the public and city government loses out quite a bit with the electronic format. And I'm also excited about the idea of the hybrid version being introduced for our city council meetings and our planning commission meetings to allow the public to engage with their government in the comfort and safety of their home. I encourage my colleagues to get vaccinated, get the booster shot, wear masks when they come into council chambers. But at some point, we need to get on with getting on. And I welcome that day. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Song.
Staff tell me if there's a similar movement with other local bodies. I think the county and the library are still meeting virtually, correct? And it's only the school board that's meeting in person currently. And are there other efforts to remain virtual? Do we know?
Well, they will not be allowed to remain virtual after December 31st. I believe both the library board and the county commission would be covered by the state OMA. But I'm not familiar with what those organizations are doing in the meantime.
Okay, great, thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Do we have a closed session today?
Yes, we do. I was just checking just for the record, it is a closed session for litigation purposes under the OMA 15.268E pending litigation. The two cases are Yonker versus the City of Ann Arbor, a Washtenaw County Circuit Court case. That's City Clerk, that's Jonker. And the second case is Dortch versus the City of Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County Circuit case also. That's DORTCH. Thank you.
May I have a motion, please, to go into closed session for the foregoing reasons? Moved by Councilmember Medina, seconded by Councilmember Song. Discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Hayner.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dish,
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Song,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Medina,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs,
Yes.
Councilmember Maui.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We are in closed session. See you on the other side.
Is the link in an email or is the link on my calendar with the main meeting?
I believe it's in the calendar. to open session. Move. Councilmember Hayner, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We are back in open session. We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Bridges, second by Councilmember Redina. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Clerk's report is approved. We apparently have had enough communication from the city attorney. Mr. Postman, do we have further communications from you today? I'm going to take that as a no. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. To speak at public comment general time, please enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you are connected further, please enter *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. When it is your turn to speak, our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number, and then you will have 3 minutes in which to speak. Please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Is there anyone who would like to speak at public comment?
Mayor, I don't see any callers with their hands up.
Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Briggs.
Yes, I'd just like to draw council's attention and committee's attention to the resignation of Brad Parsons on the Transportation Commission, which points to an opening on that commission if there are members of the community who are interested. And I would just like to publicly thank Mr. Parsons for his service on that commission. He has been an incredible, incredibly knowledgeable and active transportation advocate and provided a lot of service on this commission. He really dug into the packets and was there with really detailed questions, bringing thoughtful ideas and to the commission and challenging us as a city to do more. So I appreciate that and wish him and his family good luck. And now in Alaska. So Michigan's loss and Alaska's gain.
Councilmember Amlani.
You know, I would love to end meetings on positive notes, but unfortunately my experience during the course of a meeting leads me to end them slightly different. I am under distress when we go into closed session. The last couple closed session meetings that we've gone into, one with Mr. Dohoney and the one prior to Mr. Dohoney's coming to Ann Arbor, I have felt there are different sets of treatment being given to council members, depending on where you are on the political spectrum and how closely you are aligned to the mayor. We are not treated equally. We are not given equal consideration. We're not given equal respect or time. And I say this so the public understands the conditions that members of the council endure in closed session. I will say today's closed session was light years better than our last one. But we have a double standard being practiced as to your political affiliation with the mayor and the kind of consideration that you get while in closed session. And that the public should know. I'm not going to be bullied. I'm not going to be silenced, even in closed session.
Councilmember Griswold.
I want to thank staff for their attention to streetlight outages. There's still opportunity for improvement, but we are moving forward. I saw it in the administrator's letter today. So that's a positive. And also I want to acknowledge the contribution of Bradley Parsons when he served on the Transportation Commission. He was very analytical and he always got to the bottom of things. I know he was concerned about the pedestrian crashes and what was causing them. And he spent 1 weekend reading all the UD10 reports. Those are the crash reports, and providing a report that was very helpful in moving forward. So goodbye, Bradley, and you'll be missed.
Councilmember Hayner.
Oh, just real briefly, I'll try and end on a pleasant note. There's been a lot of talk about Gelman. It's been in the news and so on. And so I get people asking me about it every time something happens on that case. And I just wanted to just kind of quickly, reiterate my thanks to SIO for doing some well testing. I thought it was a good thing that they did. And I look forward to the city having our own 6 monitoring wells located and hopefully operating shortly. The city's water source is safe as long as we continue to, hold the polluter accountable and try and accelerate the cleanup. And I think it's, this is a long-term game we're playing here. And everybody who's affected by it, we know SIO gets water from Ann Arbor. Everybody who is affected by it is playing their part, and we need to continue to do so too. And I want to thank the public for, it seems to me becoming more and more aware of what's going on with this case and being more supportive, vocal about it. And, I think that's a good thing. We had some callers earlier who spoke about PFAS, and, they bring up a good point that we've talked about ancillary to the Gelman issue about because we are getting Huron River water downstream from various polluting industries, maybe we do need to look at working with the greater Huron River watershed partners to make sure these places are being shut down. And maybe Dexter or some of the smaller communities don't have the legal might that we have that might crush these businesses properly, or at least crush them into changing their ways. And so, I appreciate when people call in and express their concerns over environmental issues. So thank you.
Further communication from council. May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Song, seconded by Councilmember Griswold. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Ms. Beaudry, Mr. Dohoney, Mr. Postma, thank you all. Bye.